And we are live on a Friday night. And I am pleased again to have the monsters that made us return to dive in with us to talk about horror hosts, movies, early influences, all the things. I welcome back Monster Mike and the Invisible Dan. Guys, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Yes,
thanks for coming back.
It's really exciting to be back. We had such a good time last time, and so I'm really excited for the chat tonight. So I hope your fans and so hopefully some of our fans are tuning in tonight, and I'm excited to answer some questions.
That would be absolutely great. Let me just go right here. I know you run out of the letter S from the pre-made kit there, so not the monsters that made you too with the mirror effect.
Love it.
Hey. Maybe we will one day play at the Giant Sphere in Vegas, just like you two.
I was thinking my dreams are a little smaller. I was like, that would make a nice T-shirt to for like some charity or something for the shows to get together on, like the way you spelled that.
For sure.
Anyway.
Excellent. Okay, so just picking up from where we left off a little bit, and let's go. So typically at the end of a show over here, I like to be sure to thank everybody, but we had again a wealth of participants jumping in last time. So from last time around, thanks for commenting: Fanboy G, Chai Star G, MIB, Barbie Gal, The Mandarin, Casual Crafter, Kelly, who is really Dan but was using Kelly's account, and then newcomers Chris K and John Comiskey and our old pal Junkyard. So thanks to everybody for having contributed last time. I also noticed last time that I mentioned for Barbie Gal, for Nicole, for her photo art, I mentioned I would have to show that to you guys. So again, just picking up a little bit of the threads of where we left off, and then we'll get into the new business. So here is part of Nicole's mashup. She does Barbie and. So here we have Barbie and Creature the Black Lagoon. Again, all in good humor. And if I can spin correctly there, it might be a little tough to see, but so there's Barbie and Godzilla right there. And then
nice.
The other Barbie and the Creature, they're floating like a lazy river kind of thing on the pool tubes there. So,
Wow.
Inner tubes.
Jealous. Dude, those are great. I love the idea. Great mashups.
All right. So one more piece of physical prop here, and then we'll start getting into the material from my pal J Spy, who does the 3D printing. I just wanted to emphasize this is the J Spy Frankenstein lab material right here. So in other
that's awesome.
Thank you. Well, J Spy is an awesome dude. So you're right. It's got all this operational stuff on it, right? Oh, I just snapped one of the levers off. Sorry, it'll replace it. But anyway, in other venues we talk about, it goes to 11. So I just wanted to crank up the potentiometer right here to get us going. And now let's go in. So when last we spoke, it was April, and on my universal calendar, that was the Creature of the Black Lagoon month. We got through May, which features the Bride on the calendar. Then this one to me is really interesting because Frankenstein's afraid of the fire, but now you've woven the visage of Frankenstein into a torch-like image. So I'm just, again, the Universal Monster calendar I live by. Go.
Yeah, I was going to say about that Frankenstein image, we so much associate the Frankenstein monster with electricity. I've seen, like we're going to talk about tattoos tonight, but whenever I see like a Frankenstein tattoo, it's always electricity. I love this idea of using fire because what's more Frankenstein than an angry mob with their torches, right? Such a clever idea. I really love that design.
And then just, I'm no meteorologist, but when lightning strikes, sometimes fire can result. And then tying to the subtitle, right? Or the modern Prometheus, the mythological stealer of fire from the gods. So it's again, many great symbols and things in the works.
The famous thief, Prometheus.
All right, let me jump to comments, and then after we take a check on these comments, we talked about last time about kind of the origins of the podcast and some of the key elements of the podcast. But also, you guys have on your different episodes dropped hints of early influences. So we're going to take a look at some early influences. But right here, Michaela, always glad to have Michaela around, and Casual Crafter. If not for Casual Crafter, I would not know of J Spy's handiwork, but absolutely it is a beautiful, beautiful lab that J Spy has made available. Crafter, glad to have you along. All right, so where was it? Okay, coming back to early influences here. As early as it can get.
Yeah.
Count. So again, I won't pretend to have any expert knowledge of the Count, but here Jerry Nicholson, just a basic cursory Wikipedia search is going to tell us Jerry Nicholson is the man. Nelson, look, I can't even read what's on my own screen. Jerry Nelson is the man behind the man.
Wow.
Just your early memories of what do you remember about the Count? What did the Count do that stood out in your young mind?
I guess I'll take it. I'll take the lead here. Yeah, it's funny when we were getting ready to talk about the topics for tonight off air, Dan mentioned the Count by his real name, which I don't think I had ever heard before. I thought he had always just been the Count, but what's his name again? Isn't that like Count Von Count or something?
I'm going to say it's Count Von Count.
Yeah, I had no idea. So that was a bit of new trivia I learned all these years later, 40 something years later. But yeah, this guy definitely stands out. You know what? Something I think special about Sesame Street was the acceptance of diversity and equality and all that kind. No matter what you looked like, it all counted. What was on the inside that counted, and it wasn't just the Count on that show. There were tons of monsters, right? Like all kinds of crazy monsters going on that were very sweet and lovable people who taught you how to spell and stuff. But this guy absolutely stood out, and you know, it warms my heart to think that Jim Henson was a fan of horror and a fan of Dracula to the degree where he got that like spark of inspiration where he's like, oh, it makes so much sense, like it's right there. His name is the Count. Like children will definitely attach to that, and it's great. You know, I mean, it's great PR for the vampire as well. You know, it's like hook them early into trusting them, so that when you need them to, when they're all grown up and you need to get in their house, they'll let you in. You know, because they trust you at that point.
Thank you so much, Mike. Dan, same question. Oh, here we go again. That's what we're here to have some fun.
Amazing. Yeah, I didn't think we were gonna get into a discussion about vampire PR about the Count, but Mike's right. You know, I think the Count did on some level make vampires more accessible to children. As for, you know, my personal experience with the Count, you know, I always liked him because he felt so different from what else was happening on Sesame Street when I was a kid. I think most Count segments on the show, he is not with Kermit and Big Bird and Elmo. He is completely separate. He was in this like spooky little mansion. And so I always gravitated towards this like unusual location and the vibe of the Count's segments. I don't know. There's something about his character that I always really enjoyed. I mean, he's essentially doing what Cookie Monster did for Numbers, right? Like he instead of cookies, he's you know, worshiping numbers. But yeah, I don't know. He just felt so different from the other characters, even though they're all considered monsters, right? Like I think Telly was a monster and Cookie Monster, obviously. Monster kind of became the catch-all for a lot of those Sesame Street characters. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a specific thing. I just remember, you know, when we were talking about Dracula, I'm thinking about where did my interest in vampires start? And I mean, the Count was in my life from pretty much day one, right? As soon as I was old enough to watch TV, I was watching the Count. And that certainly made vampires more accessible for me, even if I didn't totally understand the whole drinking people's blood thing.
What, did he do that on Sesame Street?
No, he never did that.
More the apple
that
juice.
Same fervor towards getting the numbers counted, even if they needed to be recounted. And again, just my early memories of the Count. He obviously had the Bela Lugosi replicated accent. And then the little tiny bats on either the sticks or the strings flying around in that Muppet styling. And so, yeah, he just had charisma on top of charm, and he was just a great early on character to catch up with. Okay, something else you guys have. Let me say this, and then come into other early displays, monster cereals. But so one of the things, Mike, you said in reference to your editing is that sometimes you needed to cut through the hogwash, and you had referenced that you guys were getting all in on maybe taking a few minutes, 5 minutes, talking about the Wolfman and how a certain aspect of the cinematography was going.
Mhm.
We just might get into washing some hogs tonight here. When we
Okay.
come to the hogwash, we might take some deep dives on some certain things. But then there's so much to cover, so we'll see which way it goes. Okay, so we cover the count. Let's talk monster cereals. Let's talk Count Chocula, again having the Bella voice.
Yep.
Frankenberry was a voice replication of Boris Karloff. Then Boo Berry comes in with a bit of a Peter Lorre styling to it. Later additions came the Fruit Brute and the Yummy Mummy.
Yep.
I tried to listen in some audio clips to see if there was a specific voice that they were using. I couldn't trace it, but so either flavor-wise and character-wise of the monster cereals as younger monster kids, what were your interests?
Oh man.
Yeah, I'll take the lead on that. I think I ate more Count Chocula as a kid than any of the other characters cereals. But as an adult, and even though like fruit flavors, like in terms of like my sweet tooth, I generally prefer like chocolate flavors over fruity flavors. So I eat a lot more like, you know, like a Snickers over Skittles, right? But when it comes to the monster cereals, and I think it's really because of the character, I have really latched on to Boo Berry. He is like the chillest dude, right? I mean, he always looks a little bit sleepy. And just like I totally love his vibe, right? Like I think Boo Berry seems the chillest of the main three. But I think I probably enjoy Count Chocula more. Although I have been really excited about, you know, like the past couple years, General Mills has put out like the Monster Mash to celebrate the anniversary. Was it I forget which anniversary? Was it the 50th anniversary? So they had that. That was really cool. They just introduced a new character, I think last year or the year before. Was it Carmela Creeper? She's like Frankenberry's long lost cousin, who's a DJ. Like
The
I
younger
love it.
generation.
I love it. They have created a new character in this monster cereal canon. So yeah, I probably enjoy Count Chocula the most, but Boo Berry probably gets more mileage for me.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I distinctly remember as a kid the choices. Like it was wild back then, like walking the cereal aisle. I was always more of a I was always more of a Captain Crunch. But when I was allowed, like here's the other thing. It's like for whatever reason, my mom didn't really want that cereal. It just seemed like that wasn't like I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because of the monsters. Possibly, but like I'm not into chocolate cereal. I'm into the fruitier stuff. Believe it or not, it was really hard to find Frankenberry in my neighborhood. Like I don't remember seeing it very much. I only really remember Count Chocula from the shelves when I was a little boy. So and I never bought the Count Chocula because it was chocolate, but I was always looking for the Frankenberry and I could never really find it. It's like I think it was the marshmallow cereals didn't really like live in our pantry, you know. It was like everything else was kind of cool, but there was something about the marshmallow that was just too much sugar, perhaps. I agree with Dan about Boo Berry though. I think that design is simplicity at its best. You know, that he's got the hat, he's got the bow tie, and then he's got like the eyelids. It's perfect. But yeah, so I love the designs. I love the idea that they're marketing the monsters to children somehow, and they're prepping them for when they're older in some kind of sense, you know, deep down to like not fear this kind of stuff. And I guess it helps tell the difference between what's real and fantasy. But like, yeah, I think altogether I support the monster cereal. They should come out with more characters, every couple of years, retire one for a little while, bring them out of retirement, this and that. So I'm all in on that.
Yeah, and this might be controversial opinion, but I kind of like that it is now a seasonal cereal. You used to be able to get Count Chocula and Frankenberry all year long, and now it's really just like September to October, maybe August it starts. I am not totally sure, but so I like that it's something I can look forward to. And every like late summer, early fall, I go to the store and I buy a box of everything, and I still have boxes from previous years I haven't gotten to yet. So they're just sitting on my shelf, but I make a point to go out and buy the cereals every year, especially when they have Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy, which they've brought back, although they are not the original recipes from what I understand. I know when I was a kid, those two flavors were pretty much done, and I only got to experience like the reproductions, whatever they brought them back as. I think one of them is different. I think Fruit Brute might be different from the original flavor.
Fruit Brute from the original, what was known as fruit flavor, and that might have been his downfall, that it was just too generalized.
Sure.
But then in his resurgence, I think they converted to cherry flavor,
cherry vanilla or something like that.
Something. And so for me, Count Chocula flavor was my preference out of the three originals. I didn't want to eat the Fruit Brute cereal, but when I couldn't see him on the shelf anymore, I was a little crestfallen as a younger guy. Like, why'd you have to put the Wolfman? Why'd you have to pull the Wolfman? He's a top guy. And I do see I have a comment. I'm going to come to it, but I also wanted to previous to us speaking right here, right now, I was referring to this as the Boo-Berry problem, but I think I'm going to adjust my terminology and refer to it as a Boo-Berry supply and demand problem. So the fact that you guys are giving Boo-Berry high marks here, that explains the supply and demand factor of it, because the retro Agogo people, they have the patch for Fruit Brute. They have the patch for Frankenberry, Chocula, and Yummy Mummy. The Boo-Berry patch exists, but it is like the white whale. It is the treasure thing to find. I cannot for my life find the Boo-Berry patch around anywhere. Let me jump up to comments, and then we'll go on. And we got Junkyard. All right, Junkyard. Hey, Junkyard still got his Godzilla image in there. Welcome aboard, Junkyard. Very good, very good. All right. So where was it? Okay. Also, so now color-wise, color scheme-wise, do you get so separate of the flavor? But I'm talking about there separate of the vocals. Did you have a favorite guy for his outfit?
I mean, I definitely was attracted to the Frankenberry. Like, I remember the commercials, and I was a huge fan of cartoons. I still am a huge fan of cartoons, but I mean, when I was a kid, like, I was Mike TV. Like, I was glued to it, in the 80s, and like those commercials were awesome. And I just remember Frankenberry would like come through the door and everything, and Count Chocula would like hand him the bowl of cereal and stuff. And I don't know, maybe it was just there's more intricacy. It could have been his eyes. I really liked how that's a new addition. Like, they kind of gave him glasses almost. And I always thought that was a very interesting kind of bold take, was to like, let's make him pink. Yeah, like, he couldn't be further, couldn't be. It's kind of like the least scary color, but in a weird way. Like, I love it. But
it's still bridging to strawberry flavor.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a very appealing and like safe color too. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm very drawn to that design. So that was very clever.
I think I agree with Mike here. As much as I love Boo-Berry, I think Frankenberry's design is so cool. Like, even as an adult now, I catch details that I didn't necessarily notice when I was a child, like that Frankenberry has strawberry fingernails, which is a nice touch, because we all remember Karloff's like dark painted black fingernails, and so they gave him his like strawberry fingernails, which is super cool. I think detail wise, they did a really stellar job on Frankenberry. I have to give them that.
I'll add that there's, for me, a parallel when you assemble the images, and let's even come at it from, you take the Disney princesses and they have certain colors, and when they're all assembled, they're color schemed together. So you take the pantheon of the Universal monsters and you stack the image of my production assistant is distracting me over on the side here. You take the image of the Phantom and a Dracula and an Invisible Man and just all together assembled. It's a really good team or a really good grouping look. So I think color scheme wise, you get the Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy in there with that Frankenberry and the Boo Berry and the blue and the pink, and it all comes together. Okay, so we could stay on the earlier influences. We could wash the hogs further on the hogwash, but I want to come up ahead and throw a different angle, have a little bit of variety in the questions and the conversation.
All right.
So I want to reference two different films here. There was I'm pretty sure it's House of Frankenstein, but as you guys, sometimes I'll confuse House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein.
Us too. I will too.
But then what's more clear cut, easy to remember for me is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So now within these two films, there are two different exhibits. Let me start with the Abbott and Costello. Within Abbott and Costello, they have McDougal's House of Horrors. And this was pretty much a wax museum with different exhibits and different, there was the guillotine. That's why we were getting the Dracula and getting the Frankenstein in for the exhibits. And then coming to the House of Frankenstein movie, you had Professor Lampini's Chamber of Horrors, which was more the traveling show featuring the bones of Dracula, which were actually within the continuity of the story, actual Dracula bones. Which exhibit, if you had the choice, would you rather see? Would you rather stop into McDougal's or would you rather see Lampini's traveling show?
This is a tough one, like if Lampini was coming through town, I'm not going to miss it. Is that the other guy? That's the one guy, right? Like that's the traveling guy. But yeah. And like they turned out to be Dracula's actual bones like that. If I went to that and then later on the news saw that like that was the case, I'd be so psyched. Like I'd be like, yes. But having said that, like that's a traveling show. It's hard to track down. You got to sort of find it when you can. And it's smaller in scale, even though it has that as a main attraction. It doesn't seem to be as much to do. So I would probably take the road trip. Dan, I think I might recruit you, even if it's not your preference. We could dress up as Abbott and Costello. We could go visit it. And, we could run around and reenact the entire movie. But I like that. I mean, that was some of my favorite stuff in those movies was when they kind of referenced how popular horror had become, in mainstream, in real life at that time too, where it's like, oh yeah, people didn't just like, maybe even before movies, they had these House of Horrors. And then it's like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's like make movies about the House of Horrors. It's like, yeah. So I
think I like the traveling show, the traveling carnival, like the carny environment speaks to me in a pretty big way. And so I think I would probably want to go see that show because it's just more my vibe. And also McDougal, kind of a jerk, right? So like as much as I love Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, it's like one of my favorite horror comedies of all time. McDougal, he's a jerk. So
yeah, but didn't Lampini isn't even him? Didn't he like take him out and assume his identity or something? Or there's some kind of thing where they're like escaped lunatics, like, parading.
Karloff assumes the Lampini persona to steal the bones of Dracula. So yeah, I mean, let's assume for a second that Lampini is a good guy. Right, we'll never know because he's kind of taken out of the movie pretty quickly. But I just like the idea of going to the carnival. There's more to do. You can hit the shooting gallery, get some popcorn, some cotton candy, go check out the Dracula show. I like that as part of a larger night out with my date, as opposed to the House of Horrors, which they're all wax statues. They're all, kind of still life. I mean, the closest thing that I've been to that is the Salem Witch Museum, which has an entire animatronic, show, that tells the story of the Salem witch trials. And like, that's cool, but it's all the same thing kind of done over and over to tell you that story. I don't know. I like the carnival atmosphere. That's what I would do. But I should say that I would do both.
All right, comments. Junkyard is back to Caligari. And John
Yes.
Curtis last time changed his image again. I'm not sure which this is, but that's okay. Caligari is one of the progenitors of the horror show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Caligari and his somnambulist bit is classic. Love it. That's a young who is that actor? That's
Conrad Veidt.
Conrad Veidt, that's right.
Yes.
Also
What
the
a
Man in
what a
Black.
gig. But like back then it was people, I mean, people are still gullible. I'm gullible, don't get me wrong, but like way back in Caligari's day, he's like, check out my sleepwalking guy. And they're like, ah, it's like he's just sleepwalking. It's like not that scary, but I guess,
Man, oh man. Okay. Just for variety, now when you guys raised the issue that McDougal is a jerk, and I mean he's the jerk of all jerks, he's the alpha jerk. So now I feel bad about giving McDougal my dollars, but I just felt that square footage wise, maybe the McDougal House of Horrors had more to see compared to Lampini was just working off a tiny traveling cart. But then you did include all the other carnival stuff around, so
it really depends on what kind of night you're looking for, you know. I'm a man of variety. I love a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
All right, Dynamite and Awesome again. Okay, so moving on, we're gonna look at some images that you guys were kind enough to send over. But first, I don't have any real ink whatsoever. But simultaneous to the G Fest, the Godzilla Fest that went on here, this is as close as I can get to ink, and then we'll come into things. There was also a sneaker convention literally 2 blocks away. So the Got Soul stamp is as close as I could get to any ink. But now coming into the Invisible Dan's gallery, to Dan, it's not actually William Shatner. It's the inverted William Shatner face. So Dan, how long have you had this signature in your collection? What event or convention were you able to acquire it? How did you land this Halloween signature 8x10?
Yeah, so I think all except one that I sent you that we'll look at were acquired at the Monster Mania convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It is the closest horror convention to where I am. I know they do another one in Maryland as well a couple times a year. I've never been down to that one, but I tried for a couple years. I was routinely going to Monster Mania. I think 2 shows a year, and even if I didn't get autographs or whatever, I was an opportunity to meet up with friends that I didn't get to see very often. And but I would usually try to see who the guests, maybe leave with 1 8x10 or 2 8x10s. They do add up. So if it was no 8x10s, I'd get some swag or some stuff from some of the other vendors, right? So that was Nick Castle. That was a year he came, and he was the for those who don't know, Nick Castle was the guy in the Michael Myers mask, like under the mask. Not the guy you see in the movie when the mask is pulled off, but he is the guy, basically the stunt performer who performed as Michael for the rest of the movie. And he was in the most recent Halloween movies as well, a little bit. I know James Jude Courtney kind of replaced him as Michael Myers, but there were a couple stunt sequences I know where they stuck him in. So I needed to meet the original Michael Myers, and he was such a lovely man. He was super sweet.
Oh, okay. The actor was a lovely man, super sweet, just portraying not the loveliest of individuals on screen. Okay, I was scrambled a little bit.
I mean, I like Mike too. Who doesn't like Mike? He's totally. I mean, he's a strong silent type.
He's not coming after me. So
yeah.
All right, that was one from one side of the screen. Here's from the other side of the screen. So this is not a Universal monster, but Mike, tell us what are we looking at here, if you will.
That is my vampire skull. So about a year. Well, I've been getting tattoos for years now, but about a year and a half ago, I started working at a tattoo shop, and actually now I'm an apprentice tattoo artist.
That is so cool.
When I got there, I would just start drawing and designing. And one day I asked my boss, I was like, hey, you want to do a vampire skull on my arm? And he was like, yeah, sure. So he came up with this. It's not really based off anything, although there is kind of a history of skulls with wings in tattoo design. There is a band, I think from New Jersey, called Overkill that does have a similar logo, but it's more of like a green color. I found that out after. Still cool. I like that band. So that is sort of the background on this guy. Yeah, he's one of my more, I think I'd say one of my more recent ones, well, within a year or so. So yeah.
Definitely got an excellent crack in the bone right across the middle of the head
Yeah.
there, implying some kind of collision or some kind of rough and tumble damage.
Yeah.
Am I looking at, is one of the teeth golden? And is
Oh,
there
yeah.
any significance to having one gold tooth?
Sort of, kind of like in at the shop that I go to with the guy that does like 90% of my work. He used to joke that every time he did a skull, he had to put a gold tooth in it. And one day he was doing another tattoo on me, and I was like, wait, like, where's the gold tooth? And he started laughing. He's like, where do you want it? I was like, well, pick a tooth and just make it a gold tooth. So like every time I've gotten a skull, he's just taken a tooth and made it gold for me. So
That is
That's-
definitely specific history.
not really. I mean, I guess it's sort of how like pirate-ish, maybe, if I had to connect it anyhow to tattooing. Yeah, that's might be like where the influence started, but yeah, that's it.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for giving us
I
the
want to meet the
backstory.
dentist who had the nerve to.
Oh, it was
I want to meet the
Renfield. It
dentist
was
who had the
Renfield.
nerve to put a gold tooth in a vampire.
I'm thinking it's Renfield. It couldn't be a silver tooth, right? Like that, it killed him, but
Well
Right.
played, well played.
I don't know.
All right, coming back across the way, and now again jumping out of order a little bit and looking at again those early influences. So before seeing, R-rated material, Sesame Street wasn't the only younger person friendly exhibition or manifestation of monsterhood. So now here we go. Butch
Oh, boy.
Patrick, Eddie Munster with Wolfie. So Dan, same kind of thing. Which convention was this? How long ago was it? Do you have a cool Butch Patrick story?
Actually, I forgot that I sent you that one. So this one was not gotten at Monster Mania. This was actually coincidentally acquired at the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention. Oh man, that would have been 2014 maybe. I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2014 or 2015. He was at the Philly Tattoo Convention, and I did not know he was going to be there. I was just walking around enjoying the various art that I was seeing. There was a lot of live tattooing, and then I looked over and I was like, "That's Butch Patrick." Like I just clocked him from across the way, and I knew what he looked like as an adult, I guess, at some point, but I hadn't seen him in a while, and I just was like, "That's Butch Patrick. We have to go say hi." So we went over there, and he sells a line of like tattoo ink now,
Oh.
but he also had like a bunch of 8x10s of him as Eddie Munster. And so so I asked him if can I get an autograph, get some photos, and he's like, I think he assumed immediately because I was young that I didn't know who he was. And I was like, oh, no, trust me. I grew up in a Monster's house. I know exactly who you are, and I'm a big fan. And so he was like super cool. Like, if you ever get a chance to meet Butch Patrick, please do. He is very humble. Like I think he's really gracious when he meets fans. And he signed 2 8x10s for me, actually. That's the one I like the best, the one with Woof Woof. But he signed another one for me where he's with like the Monster Mobile. Or no, I'm sorry. It's Butch Patrick on like a bicycle, like a sort of like spooky bike. But yeah, Butch Patrick's super cool.
Well, I haven't directly encountered Butch Patrick, but that is a super cool story. I want to come into some Munsters. We'll take a little pause and dive into Munsters a bit here. At the Volo Museum, which was formerly known as the Volo Auto Museum, about an hour north here, you got your Blues Brothers mobile, you've got your Night 2000, you've got your Speed Racer car, and also you have your Dragula and your Munsters coach. So being able to see those replicas of artifacts from from the Monster show. Definitely worth the trip over to Volo for that. Well, at least from over here. I don't expect you guys to jump on the plane to come, hang out for an hour and all that. So I've heard you lean maybe more into Monsters compared to Addams Family. Was that related to your first interaction with the shows, or is there something about Monsters that just catches your attention more compared to Addams Family?
So for me, my mom and my uncle grew up watching the Munsters, so that's why I grew up watching the Munsters. I like the Addams Family, but I have no real nostalgia for it. I just, like it's not something that I grew up with. So I distinctly remember Munsters episodes, and my family will quote Munsters episodes, and so it was just a matter of me being raised with one and not the other. And so that's why I gravitate towards the Munsters. But, just as an adult, from what I've seen of the Addams Family, I think that the Addams Family movies kind of do the Addams Family concept better than the show did. Maybe that's controversial. I don't know. I hope not. I just really love what they did with those movies with that cast. They were just so amazing. But yeah, that's my Munsters history.
Yeah, I think our house was more of a Munsters house. I mean, I remember both shows. I know my mom loved the Addams Family. She kind of had the long hair like Morticia, but was blonde, not jet black like that. And that humor is a little more adult in a way. Like I think it's more subversive than the Munsters was. That's way more straightforward. You have the physical monsters portrayed, whereas the Addams Family is like the humans are the monsters, and it's just like I don't know. There's something a little like advanced for children at the time I was watching the shows. From I didn't quite get the Addams Family as much, but I loved the Munsters, and I loved how they had like all the monsters representing, and love little Eddie Munster for sure.
I think Butch Patrick, and I could be wrong, is the only surviving member from both of the casts. So let's just appreciate Butch Patrick as long
I think
as,
you're right about that.
we have him around.
Yeah.
From my history, I definitely had, by what seemed at the time, leaps and bounds of a head start with the Munsters. And it wasn't until so in Illinois or up in the Chicago area, and I was on my first ever trip to the state fair in Springfield, downstate by about 3 hours. And I happened to be sick. I'm maybe 10 years old. And so we're in the hotel room, and then it's just randomly comes on the TV. I'm like, it was the Addams Family. And I'm like, what's this? There's another show that's like Munsters, and I never knew about it. And so now at my age, I'm thinking, well, 10 was still really young, but boy, oh boy, at the time I was like, why did nobody tell me about this? What's going on here?
Yeah. Embarrassment of riches back then.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say this. I think there's no argument here. The Munsters have the better theme song.
I love that movie with the Dragula. Like that drag race movie is so much fun. I love the design and everything. It reminds you of like Al Roth kind of stuff, and it's great stuff.
Absolutely. All right, let's read out Junkyard's comment. It's been floating.
Cool.
The ink is awesome. You should get a Peach Kid tattoo, smiley face, wink face. Butch Patrick was on Chicago's WGN once and agrees, seemed nice and cool. And then Junkyard is double pumping here. His profile picture is Peach Kid.
Oh,
Best totally bizarre horror sci movie from Taiwan. All right, then deep cuts, talking about washing hogs and taking a deep dive. There's Junkyard. He's hitting the Caligari. He's hitting the Taiwan Child of Peach from '87. Okay, flavors, peach. Okay, that's well done. All right, let me come back over to the other pictures. Okay, so we left off from Butch Patrick, and now back to Monster Mike and more ink.
Okay. Yeah, funny enough, Dan, this original design, so this is a riff on a classic tattoo design, which is like the praying hands, which you see a lot. It's a great tattoo. It usually has religious kind of connotations and stuff. And I really liked the design, and I was kind of messing around with it one day, and I came up with this concept. I was like, what if they were Frankenstein's hands, like the monster's hands? I think that has a fun double meaning to it. And I designed this with flames.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and my boss now at the time, like the guy I always went to, he came back with the lightning, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I actually think this works better. And like, while conceptually the flames is a cool idea, I think visually it was a bit cluttered in a way. They kind of wove throughout the fingers and like was on top of the design a little more. And I'm really glad about this. This is still one. It's one of my favorite. This might be still my favorite tattoo that I have.
Man. Oh, then I should have saved that one for last.
No, it's okay. It's I said might be. I can't.
No, again, and as a person with no ink myself, again, speaking of lightning just now, as we were speaking a few minutes ago, and I don't know, we had like a record setting string of maybe between 10 to 17 consecutive tornadoes passing through just a couple days ago. So plenty of people had in the social media the pictures of lightning and the skies and everything. And just again, thinking back to 1931, before TV and everything, they're capturing the image of the lightning through the motion picture. So again, what an awesome symbol. And again, before our conversation right now, I hadn't given much credence, or I hadn't made the connection so much between lightning can start a fire and fire and modern Prometheus. And so there's a lot of, you're doing a lot with just those two hands immortalized on you there, Mike. Excellent.
I remember when Mike was designing that one, and I remember saying like I should get a matching one, and that could be our co-host matching tattoos. But I don't know if that'll actually happen. But now that Mike is tattooing or learning to tattoo, I think I definitely have to come up and get something.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll definitely get something for sure.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Something we didn't realize, again, in general, I try to not do a show, quote unquote, against Svengoolie schedule, but last time we were on concurrent to Svengoolie until Dan and I were speaking just before we went live. I didn't realize Joe Bob Briggs was on tonight also, so I don't really think we're hurting Joe Bob in any kind of a way, but here we go in Dan's collection, a younger Joe Bob. Again, what's the backstory on this one, Dan?
Okay, so I completely lied about Monster Mania. I think I only sent you one picture from Monster Mania. This one, I met Joe Bob. Yeah, I apologize. Most of the 8x10s I have back here are from there. I don't know how it worked out, but so I knew you would appreciate a Joe Bob photo because I know you like Svengoolie, and we all love Svengoolie. But I thought it'd be fun to share a different horror host that I do have an autograph from, and so I got to attend. He's doing a show. It's a lecture series, and I think he's been doing it for a couple years now. I think he's still doing it, and it's called How Rednecks Saved Hollywood. And I got to see him at a venue in Philadelphia, a venue that I volunteered at the time. And so I got to volunteer for that event, and I got to meet him. And I got to hang out with him after the show because I was still like sort of kind of an employee of the venue. And he was just one of the coolest dudes, and his presentation is awesome. If he's still doing it, absolutely go see How Rednecks Saved Hollywood. It's wonderful. It's like going to like a college course that you really want to be at. Like it's everything he does is super well researched and thought out. And I knew that I would have to get him to sign something, so I had him sign an 8x10, and I had him sign one of his books as well. I have a copy of one of those.
Mike, your thoughts on Joe Bob, and have you had an encounter with him?
He's the man. This is the only thing that would make me miss Last Drive-In right now is just so yeah, I've not met him. I would love to meet him someday. I try to watch he's on every other Friday now on Shudder. So I've been watching him since I was a little teenager. Do you call a teen? I guess I wasn't that little, but I was a teenager, and I remember he hosted on like Monster Vision and all that. So like he was one of my horror hosts, going back. I always remember him sitting there with his Lone Stars and different male girls and all that stuff. So yeah, just Good times. Very informative. Yeah, he is a scholar. That guy knows what he's talking about. Like he can just go off, and not just about film, but when it comes to film, like he is legit. Like Joe Bob's a persona, but the guy underneath is very well learned, knows exactly what he's doing. And yeah, super smart guy. I love watching him.
It also occurred to me recently. I was watching one of the last drive-ins on Friday night a few weeks ago, and it struck me. I don't know how. I think he somehow influenced the way I host the Monsters That Made Us. In that, he starts every show and he's got like all this information about the different cast members and the production of the movie. And like, while it wasn't something I ever set out to do with any intention, I think on some level he has infiltrated my brain and influences the way that I construct the Monsters That Made Us. So I won't say what I do is exactly like his, but I definitely felt like, oh man, this feels like what I do on our show on some level. And so, I'm so grateful to him for doing that.
Bit of inspiration, bit of through line, bit of similar concept as he's applying it. I did not know of Joe Bob. Again, don't come at me, Joe Bob fans, but as we said here, we're not experts.
Get the torches. No,
No kidding. Let me go seal the doors. At the Flashback Convention, which is our local horror con over here. And again, it was the sitting down at the table of legends. There's Svengoolie next to Joe Bob. There's Joe Bob next to Svengoolie. I was not at the Flashback Convention where Svengoolie and Elvira first met. But now just looking at the importance of this convention, you get a Svengoolie and Elvira on the same stage at the same time, a historical thing. You get a Svengoolie and a Joe Bob together. Again, history's made at the con. And the more clips I watch of Joe Bob, the more I like him. So we're safe to say we're not experts. I feel it's safe to say Joe Bob has expert level knowledge and also a quick wit. I mean, whether he's talking to Jay Leno in that historical clip when he's on Tonight Show, or whether he's just riffing, or he's on his own show by himself, or he's interacting with the current male girl Darcy, or one of the historical male girls. He's got it. It's a quality thing.
It's so interesting to me, specifically the horror host, for some reason. And like, I'm waiting for Paul Thomas Anderson to make the movie about it, because his father was a famous horror host. And it's like something about it, like why it's ever since it started, it's been around. And it's like no one else is hosting regular movies unless it's Turner Classics. And that was its whole gig. But it's not like there was ever a guy who comes out like, today's action movie is this, right? It's always been like, tonight we're gonna like scare each other and talk about horror and stuff. So like, yeah, I really feel like there is a movie there somewhere of like the main character is a horror host, maybe from like the past or maybe from now. I don't know, but it's intriguing.
We have Am I Dead Yet? Hello, Am I Dead Yet? Welcome around. Joe Bob. Well, I'm going to say Joe Bob is nationwide. And again, we didn't have exposure to him when Svengoolie was still local. We were locked into Svengoolie and Junkyard. I'll send you some links. But again, my estimation is, my guess would be, Junkyard, that you would again appreciate his quickness of wit matched with his depth of knowledge, and just put that a little bit, not in your face, but just a slight edge, a good amount of biting humor. And hey, Storgoolie, welcome, Michaela. Always awesome to have Michaela around, one of the top Sven pals of all. Michaela, thanks for tuning in. We're going to be talking on horror host.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Joe Bob Briggs has always been national, unlike most horror hosts. I think most of them are regional, right? And then if they're very popular, like Svengoolie was a regional horror host in Chicago until he got picked up by a national network or something to that effect, right? So that's why I get to watch Svengoolie here in Philadelphia. But for a while, like in the old days, he was just a Chicago guy. And Elvira also national, right, pretty much from the beginning. And I think that's because they both started, they gained steam elsewhere. Joe Bob was writing movie reviews in like these little local newspapers, and then somebody picked him up and gave him a national show. And then Elvira was creating that character, or Cassandra Peterson was creating that character in the Groundlings, and then that picked up steam, and then she was given her own program. But yeah, most of them, we had some of our own. I think my dad remembers watching somebody named Dr. Shock, I want to say. So like we had our own horror hosts that sadly don't exist anymore, but I think it's a lost art. And I agree with Mike. I think somebody needs to do like sort of the way Quentin Tarantino is now working, or was working on a movie about like a movie reviewer character. Like somebody should make a movie. Paul Thomas Anderson would be a great choice as far as I'm concerned, but a movie about like a current or former horror host, and sort of like what that life is all about, because I think it's fascinating.
Mystery Men and Monsters, a first-time commenter. I'm assuming a first-time viewer. We are trying to talk the language of horror hosts. Welcome. We're glad to have you around, Mystery Men and Monsters. A few more of the pictures that Mike and Dan were generous enough to pass my way to be stirrers in the conversation. And then I want to flip and do a share screen with the Horror Host Hall of Fame listings. But again, it's plenty of Joe Bob talk, plenty of Svengoolie talk coming up in the next few minutes. Here we go. So we were last at Joe Bob, and now
yes, that is my scary phonograph. It's so like this idea was in my head for a while because I DJ'd in a previous life, and I wanted to do something related to that, something record related, but I didn't think like modern turntables were very recognizable. And I was like, phonographs are really cool and they have an interesting style to them, and you could definitely tell what it is when you're looking at it. But then I was like, I always had to like push it and go the extra distance. And I was like, well, phonographs also kind of, you could play like scary, creepy music out of them. And a lot of times there's sort of the scary thing in a basement or an attic or used to that effect dramatically. And so I was like, you know what? I said, this was not my boss / mentor. This was another artist actually did this. She's great. But I was like, you know what? Make it scary, make it look like old and dusty, and make it look like, something horrifying would come out of it, like an old creaky record or something.
Yeah, if you stick your ear real close to it, the legend is that you kind of hear Swan Lake play through it.
Backwards, though. It plays everything backwards.
Yeah.
Stairway to Swan Lake.
Exactly.
Very good. Now, Mike, did you collaborate on the color choices here? Again, the purple and the blue.
Not so like I'm a little like I kind of was just more trusting with her at the time. It was my first time going to this particular artist. A friend of mine got most of her work recently done by this artist, and I was like, you know what, like she suggested a couple colors. She suggested purple for the flower. She thought it would be a little like creepier. And I was like, yeah, just go for it. Do it a little more sort of muted, a little more like it's worn, a little age it if you can. So yeah, I think I'm very pleased with how it turns out. It's actually quite a different color scheme from most of my other stuff. I think it's all the purple that I wear. It's right there.
Junkyard is in agreement. The phonograph is absolutely wonderful. The added cobweb and the violets, absolutely. It's just a well-constructed piece of ink. Oh, and Junkyard's not done. Also the wood grain.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. The little details that matter for a lot. Let me come back over here so I can pull that. I'm going to go slightly out of sequence. I was going back and forth, Dan, Mike, Dan, but then since we're going to double pump on Mike on this, and then we'll come to Dan's stuff, and then we'll look at the Horror Host website. So, all right.
Okay. Yeah. I love this guy. So it's funny, like, so I'll just be at work, like tracing all day or drawing all day and just coming up with designs all day. And it's kind of how I ended up getting the apprenticeship, because it was like after a year and a half of just drawing stuff that my boss would look at and be like, let's put that on you. Like, let's do this. So like I was drawing this design at work one day, and my boss saw it and he's like, oh, that's cool. Like, good job on that one. I was like, you want to put it on my leg? He's like, yeah, sure. So like I showed up the next day and he barely changed a line. He didn't, it's like practically exactly how I envisioned it. So kudos to him. Like, I'm very honored to be trained by him at the moment, so that one day I could do something like half as good as this. I'd be pleased. But like, yeah, I had to give a special shout out to the Gill man. I'm not sure, man. Like, I didn't send you this other one because I didn't realize how it related until now, but I do have a wolf head. It's not a wolf man, but it is a wolf head, and I do kind of count it as part of my horror menagerie of heads on my body. So maybe I'll say that one for the next episode when we're back. But yeah, I love that guy. I was just drawing him at work one day, and then a week later he was on my body. Yeah.
As I slide into my own inventory of 3D glasses here, and on a previous show when I was with Fanboy G, I said, there's only so long I can leave these on before I'm totally, as I'm doing it now, I'm messing with my eyes and my brain. But picked up at the Oddities and Curiosities, or Curiosities and Oddities, the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, one of the vendors here. So you got the skateboard, underwater, and creature, and it came with these very 3D glasses.
Yeah.
So it's set to be a 3D business there. And so again, we'll put a pin in there, so to speak, and revisit that, because that is definitely one of my standard questions is in the regarding of the 3D broadcasts related to. So okay, so jumping back across the way now.
Oh, nice! Look at that. Oh,
came from Berwyn, and let me zero in on the signature. So let me ask you, Dan, was I correct in my guess? Was this the New York Comic Con, or was this some other opportunity you had to meet Rich Koz Svengoolie?
So I have never met Rich Koz. That's that. Yeah, not to bury the lead. I have never met Rich. That was a gift from a coworker who lived in Chicago, and he and I both work in television now. Now we work from home. But we were working in New Jersey, and when we met, I told him that I was a fan of Svengoolie, and he told me that he used to work at MeTV, and so he knew Rich. He would go to work and just see him there all the time. And so when he found out I was a fan of the show, he surprised me with an autographed poster. And so yeah, I love that poster. That's a really fun one. I hope to meet Rich one day, but I haven't met him quite yet.
So cool that you stumped me, but more importantly, cool that you had that story, that you got to run into somebody that would be able to connect you with the autograph and the image. Again, if it was the case that your schedules did allow to stop over for the first weekend of August for Flashback, I'm not really trying to put a hard sell, but I just think it's a good, right? Horror conventions can be a really good.
Well, I was just in Chicago, but only passing through. I didn't want to mention it because I'm like, I can't tell everybody I'm coming through Chicago because I don't have much time. I really I had to prioritize my Italian beef, my hot dog, and I had to get a bottle of Malort to take home. And like, I had barely enough time for those things. So next time I'm in Chicago, I'll absolutely let you know. But I hope to come back sometime soon.
Now that is good stuff. Now we can't say Malort on this channel without referencing Sarah Gooley. So that's part of her whole shtick and campaign is she's under the Chicago River drinking Malorts, and in her, not her cosplay, right, but in her, I'm drawing a blank on how she refers to it, but in her manifestation of the Svengoolie, she carries that trident with 3 tiny airplane size, individual size little wee bottles of Malort on her trident.
That's
that
amazing.
So now, again, last time we took a mini detour to look at Mike's DJ equipment and catch some stories of his juggling beats and such. Dan, in a short format, where did you get the beef sandwich, and what is your impression of Chicago Italian beef?
So I went to Johnny's.
Yes.
You
did right.
Right. So I have a friend out there, and when I knew that I was going to be in Chicago, so I went to I officiated a wedding in Michigan, in New Buffalo, Michigan, and it was the easiest for me to fly into O'Hare and then rent a car and drive into Michigan. But I messaged a friend of mine. I'm pulling it up now, so just bear with me a second. I asked him for some recommendations. I said I want a hot dog and I want an Italian beef. Where do I go? And he recommended a few places for the hot dog. I ended up going to Super Dog, right by the airport.
A mile from, well, I don't, whatever. I can give it away. I'm about a mile from Superdog. That's
Oh, no kidding. So I went to Superdog. I had to scarf down a hot dog really quickly because I was running late for a wedding rehearsal. And then when I came back, I went to Johnny's, and it was excellent. I mean, I come from the land of the Philly cheesesteak, and while I think that the Italian pork sandwich we have here is superior to the cheesesteak, I will say that the Italian beef in Chicago is comparable to the best of the sandwiches we have here. It's different, but like the vibe is similar, right? Like I waited in a long line that moved pretty quickly. They only took cash. It was messy. They gave me paper, like tiny, like thin napkins.
Yeah.
It was spicier than I expected it to be, but like all just such an amazing experience. I would definitely recommend Johnny's to anybody passing through the Chicago area.
Well stated, like a boss. And interesting that similar base ingredients to the Philly cheese steak and to the Italian beef, but then you go in a different direction with the spices, get a really different result.
Absolutely.
All right, let me jump into the Horror Host Hall of Fame, and let me come around and get this on the screen. And here we go. All right, so sharing, let me come back
wow.
here so I can see. Let me do a little scrolling. I hope I'm able to. All right, I'm scrolling on this. Okay. Well, anyway, Horror Host Hall of Fame. There's the most recent inductees visible there. So, you guys, who was your first horror host? Mike, let's go to you first.
I remember Count Floyd. I remember him now. I definitely watched him as a kid, and I also remember the actor Joe. Is that Joe Flaherty?
Joe Flaherty. Yep.
Flaherty. Yeah. He was on like maybe SCTV or something. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, I remember him from lots of. They just was a character actor in tons of comedy when I was a youngster, I think, and yeah. But I remember him of these people that I'm seeing now. That's the guy I recognize from the top of the list here so far.
And Dan, your first horror host?
Oh man, I am ashamed to admit that I came pretty late to the horror hosts. So I mean, Elvira is such an American cultural icon that it's, even if you have never seen her show, everyone knows who Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, is. So that's probably where I first conceived of the idea of a horror host. I was kind of too young to watch Joe Bob on Monster Vision, so I'm really fortunate that I get a chance to enjoy him do pretty much the same thing now on The Last Drive-In. And then I discovered Svengoolie within the past couple of years. So yeah, I am quite late to the horror host game, unfortunately. I'm trying to think if there are some other characters that I maybe am not thinking of, but that's what immediately springs to mind.
What I'm thinking of now is just like, look how many of them there are, and this is awesome. This is like, I remember Al Lewis because of his grandpa, but like, yeah, we're considering the Crypt Keeper a horror host.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, dude, Tales from the Crypt. I can't believe my parents let me watch that show, but like they'd watch some episodes with me. I was like, what am I getting away with? That was wild. But like, yeah, we definitely need a movie now or a documentary about all, like, this is terrific to see.
Al Lewis was a horror host?
See, so Scary Saturdays.
Trading info. So yeah, so after being the iconic character of Grandpa Munster, however many years passed, and we know maybe there was a piece of typecasting involved, or maybe I can't get work under different, kinds of shows or different kinds of things. So I'm, without knowing the full history, at some point, Al Lewis had to at least a little bit lean into it and be like, okay, I'll go horror host as my job. And so again, just as we said earlier, for the group of the Universal Monster characters, having a plethora of them all together, heavy hitter after heavy hitter, each covering a different niche and a different set of nuances. So this clustering this entire group, this Hall of Fame of horror hosts, it's just some good material to dig into.
Man, wild
Oh.
thing about the Al Lewis kind of stuff, I guess, is that in the Universal, it's Warner Brothers picture, but I thought it was Universal, but in Gremlins 2, in that movie, like it takes place in this like futuristic building that has everything, including a television studio, and they have a guy dressed up like Dracula doing a horror host kind of show thing where he's introducing horror movies. So I mean, it permeated.
And I don't know if you would do this on purpose, Mike, but you're wearing a Fright Night t-shirt. Like I knew Peter Vincent as like he's one of my favorite horror hosts, and he's not even real. It's just Roddy McDowell.
Well, blurring the line between that which is real and that which is not, Count Floyd, well, scary, kids? So, again, part of the lore of Count Floyd was...
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue. I just noticed somebody else.
Just within that, so on SCTV, he was also Floyd the Weatherman, as was very often the case that a regional person was having something to do with a local affiliate station and then slotted into horror host. So it was just very meta or very layered what Floyd was doing. But go ahead, Dan. Who else did you spot? Who looked familiar to you?
Yeah, so I just spotted Mr. Lobo. He's a more current like horror host figure. I first met him at Blobfest that's how many years ago was that? That was 7 years ago now. I attended Blobfest in Phoenixville, PA, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's where they shot the Blob. It's where the Colonial Theater is, where that famous shot of everybody running out of the movie theater. I got to do that with Mr. Lobo on the weekend of my 30th birthday. That was fun. And then I didn't even consider Mystery Science Theater 3000, like more science fiction than horror. But yeah, I remember watching episodes of that when I was a kid too. So yeah, I guess my history with the hosts is not as sparse as I thought.
My senior year English teacher in high school loved Mystery Science Theater and encouraged us to watch it. So I'll just say that. Teacher.
That is pretty cool.
Thank you, teacher.
Super cool.
Miss Schaefer. Shout out.
Shout out to Miss Schaefer. Shout out to Mystery Men and Monsters. Loving the Ton of Horror, Sammy Terry. And then back to Am I Dead Yet? Yeah, some Tales from the Crypt episodes had adult content.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't Goosebumps. It was proto Goosebumps, pre Goosebumps, but on a total different degree of horror than the more kid friendly Goosebumps kind.
You know what I'm just thinking of? Would Rod Serling qualify? Even though it was sort of his show and he didn't show movies, like he kind of took the position of like the host, and his Twilight Zone was definitely horrifying from time to time. So I don't know. That might be a little gray zone, but.
Well identified, because it was, I say, if we're going to cast the umbrella wider, then there was definitely the same result from what Rod Serling was doing both on Twilight Zone and on Night Gallery.
Yeah.
But he wasn't necessarily hosting a horror film or classic Universal but I mean, you can't take.
Well, he sort of fits the same mold as the Crypt Keeper, right? He's introducing this story you're about to see, which is all it reminds me of a lot of Warren Publishing comics, like Creepy Magazine, that had a sort of Crypt Keeper type character to introduce the story. So I guess it depends on how you want to define that character, but I see the Crypt Keeper and Rod Serling to be very, very similar.
All right, let me jump out of the Host Hall of Fame. This question, Svengoolie related, the answer is already stated. After Svengoolie hit MeTV is when you guys were able to have access to learn about Svengoolie. You were already maybe deeper into horror hosts than what you had realized. And again, as when I talk to people more my own age, it's more of a timestamp. Where were you on this specific night kind of a question? And as I talk to people younger and people that are slotting in with your age bracket, but it was the summer of 1982, and we were all running to 7-Eleven to get our 3D glasses. But then during the actual broadcast, the 3D effect wasn't very well realized. So it was some people even went as far as lawsuit, class action, to say you ripped us off of our 89 cents on the 3D glasses. But what stories or what legends have you guys heard of that going on? Or I know it was definitely Chicago specific at that time, but I know also as I'm building up my knowledge base, some other markets were affected by this. So what stories have you heard about 1982 and the 3D effect not manifesting as it was intended?
I'm not. I don't think I know anything about this. This is brand new.
Yeah, I as well have to claim ignorance too, like I had definitely heard of Svengoolie before he appeared, in our market, and the affiliates picked him up and stuff, but I did not know that about his history. That is wild. I wonder if that actually affected the marketing of 3D in general, because you kind of see it disappear from theaters around that time or very soon after too. It becomes very scarce.
But I remember they did try it again in the 90s. I remember oh man, what network was Home Improvement on? Because there was like that, whatever network that was, Home Improvement played along, and there were a couple other shows on the same night that all did like a 3D episode. So like it's a gimmick that has been tried again in our certainly in our lifetimes, Mike. I was born in 87, so I'm way past this 82 Svengoolie situation. But yeah, no recollection of that, unfortunately.
But again, as I go across conversation to conversation with different people, it is awesome to assemble the collective bit of answers. And in my last chat showing Russ, when he was showing the custom Svengoolie train that he has, he gave me a new answer that I had no concept of before. He said, because the regional grocery store besides 7-Eleven that was selling the 3D glasses was Dominic's. And so I think the lawsuit had gone against Dominic's, the class action lawsuit over 3D glasses.
Okay.
Wild.
So then Russ says to me just a few days ago, right here, he says, oh, well, he was working at Dominic's that night, so he didn't get to see the movie, but he was like in the warehouse, so he was kind of isolated from any flack.
I was gonna say, I'm glad the class action lawsuit was against Dominic's and not Svengoolie, because imagine the sort of person you got to be to file a class action lawsuit against a TV horror host. Come on now.
But also I'm thinking like, look, I love 3D conceptually. Like I have 3D glasses tattooed on my body. Okay. Like I love it. I think it's a great idea. It works sometimes, but like you're never expected to work really, right? The way it's supposed to. So it's like, who's complaining if it's not working right? Like I've got 3D DVDs that don't work that come with glass. I'm not sending it back to the manufacturer or nothing. It's like, all right, well, that's part of the fun. Part of the gag is like, it doesn't really work right sometimes, and you got to do this or that, or like paste into your face or something like that. To me, is part of the experience. So it's too bad they couldn't enjoy it.
Awesome.
It's funny. The only time Mike and I have ever gone to the movies together, it was to see a 3D movie.
That's true.
That's priceless. Do you care to say which?
It was a new 3D movie. Yeah, it wasn't like an old one. It was a new one, so it wasn't like the red and blue anaglyph glasses. It was My Bloody Valentine 3D, which to this day I still really love. It executed the sort of 3D gimmick perfectly. Yeah, it's so over the top and goofy, but it did everything in the best ways.
All right, so clearly you've watched films as hosted by Horror Host. Clearly you've watched films pure in their original format without a horror host. Would you say, what are the advantages to watching the movie, just the movie? What are the advantages to watching a movie as hosted by a horror host?
Okay, so it's interesting because like I kind of might say from time to time I prefer having the host, because I was one of these people that watched movies with a lot of audio commentaries, like director commentaries, actor commentary, back in when they used to do that a ton, back in like the early the 2000s, we'll just say, to like recently. I don't really see that much as often, but like I love kind of getting the behind the scenes, the breakdown, the method, you know, what they were thinking, just all that kind of stuff. Any of that extra. I like to. Now, I will say I will try to do that after I've seen the movie clean. Like I'll watch the movie first and then I'll watch it with DVD audio commentary. What's cool about watching a movie for the first time with a horror host is like you could do that because he kind of is there with you to like, you know, hold your hand through it and stuff. And it's like, you know, he doesn't expect you to have seen this before, you know, that kind of situation. So I really enjoy that too. Like so I go back and I watch like the old Last Drive-ins and stuff all the time, and it's like, oh, I haven't seen this one. Yeah, I'll watch it with him, you know, popping up in between segments and stuff. Yeah, I really enjoy that kind of thing.
Yeah, to echo what Mike said, I also really enjoy learning about these movies that I like, or you know, learning as I go, as I watch it. If I'm watching something for the first time, it can help it can help enhance the experience for me, where I'm learning something about this movie as I watch it unfold, and it doesn't interrupt the movie, right? It's always okay, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to learn a little bit about this movie, and then we're going to get back to the movie. So it is broken up, but it's not commentary, which is over top of the movie, right? So yeah, I really like learning. I also think one of the advantages is you know, a lot of movies that get shown in this format tend to be not so good. I know Svengoolie has been fortunate enough to get a lot of the Universal Monster stuff, which is super cool, but I feel like most horror hosts are showing subpar material, and that doesn't mean it's not fun, but it can be easy to disengage if there is no horror host to keep you reined in, right? When I'm watching something on The Last Drive-In, or if I'm watching something Svengoolie is showing, and it's not like of the highest quality, I know, like, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I can't wait to hear what Svengoolie is going to tell me about this section. You know, like I look forward to the breaks to hear what Svengoolie is going to say or what Joe Bob's going to tell me. And so I think a horror host can enhance a bad movie and also enhance a really good movie, but they do it in different ways. And I get different things out of those experiences. So, would I recommend somebody see something for the first time with a horror host? Maybe not, but I would rather somebody watch something with Svengoolie or Joe Bob for the first time than never watch that movie. Because there's so many of those movies that I might never have an opportunity to watch or have a reason to watch. And so they become that reason to watch. So I love the horror host format now that I've grown more accustomed to it.
Agree completely. And again, across the years, right, you're going to run a full gamut of things, from that which is more classically Universal, and then even within the black and white Universal, the 30s, the 40s, and so on. There were A movies, there were B movies, and some of the stuff Sven or Elvira or skews into the Mystery Science Theater, which it won't even get a letter of A or a B. Some of it is more schlocky, but yeah, so it depends on what your tastes are, what you want to appreciate. Am I Dead Yet has dropped this question a bit ago. Anyone remember a series similar to Tales from the Crypt, Goosebumps, called The Storyteller with John Hurt presenting?
No way. No, I didn't. I never heard of that. Was that stateside, or might have been Jim Henson? No kidding. I got to look that up because love John Hurt, you know, the War Doctor, right?
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. He has such a great voice. Loved him in Aliens too, so he's got like a horror connection.
No, John, I can't see. I don't. So my first honest answer is I don't know. I'm not sure, but there was something that Jim Henson did that there were Muppet characters, right? From, I can't think of the name of maybe just Jim Henson Studios or whatever the name is. So they were created foam creatures in that, but there was a Storyteller might have been the name of it. So maybe this is the thing. And then there were kind of 2 seasons of it. The second of which stood out more for me, that it was a Greek mythology bit, and there was the Orpheus and Medusa and the Minotaur in separate episodes.
Wow.
So like high production quality.
I just looked up the Wikipedia real quick, and it was like each episode was like a European traditional folk tale, and it was Jim Henson's the storyteller. So Jim Henson created this show, and it was much like the rest of his work, a combination of live action and puppetry, with John Hurt as the host,
Wild.
as the titular storyteller.
Cool.
Thanks for the question. Am I dead yet? That was a good. Again, we might wash some hogs. We might do some deep cuts here. So that's exactly spot on. All right, guys, we're coming hour 20-ish. Let's knock down some other questions, and then again, I'm more than happy to have you guys come back around. It feels like the amount of material to cover, we just can't get to it all, but that's a good thing. Let's just do some basics. Last time it was one of the newer people, and I should have cited them exactly, but they phrased the question better than just, was this your favorite? But they said, which character do you connect to? So now I'm going to come more basic, more 101 level than that. Just for movie, is there a favorite movie you have out of the things you cover on the Monsters That Made Us podcast, out of the classic black and white stuff? Is there a favorite movie that you have?
Oh man, this is tough.
Sophie's
This is
choice.
tough. Like, all right, I have like kind of two answers. Maybe I have like actually, you know what? This is terrible. I'm gonna have to say, even though, man, I think the one for me that has everything that they were going for, they didn't. It ended up changing a lot, but it's like one of my favorites. It's pre-code. It's got like everything. Maybe it's not done right, but like it's got all the ideas I love about different volumes of horror and stuff. But I think that original Mummy movie, I think about scenes of that movie all the time, and it's like, I love Mad Max Fury Road, but like, I don't think about scenes like that. All that scene, that movie doesn't haunt my head. Like, there are scenes from the Mummy that live, quote unquote, rent free, right, in my head. Like, I think I bring it up all the time, Dan, on the show. Like when the Mummy shows the reincarnated princess her dead body, and it's like, who came up with that? And I just think, like, visually, the acting style, like the risque pre-code nature of the story, the maturity of it, but also like the accessibility of it, and then what was taken there and then sort of like adapted for the rest of the monsters, like Dracula borrows a lot from that and so forth. And yeah, I don't know. If I have to get down to it, like, I think that's one of the most well-made ones. It's one of the earlier ones. It's one of the more unusual ones. I think it's one of the more overlooked ones. And right now I'm like really high on it. Like, I love Dracula's Daughter and I love Bride of Frankenstein. Something about the sequels. I love the sequels. I love Wolf. I love a lot of them, but like that one has always sort of just like stood out a little more for me.
Yeah, I love that Mummy movie as well. I'm gonna echo everything Mike just said. As far as my favorite, I think I want to stick with. I mean, at the beginning of our show, like in 2020 October, we had a discussion about like our favorite movies, and I'm almost positive my answer was Frankenstein. I think that James Whale's original Frankenstein might be my favorite all-time Universal Studios monster movie. At least the straight monster movies, not counting the comedies and whatnot. But Bride, I have a complicated relationship with. I think some of the ideas in there don't totally work for me, but I do think it's very progressive, and
Dr.
it
Pretorius
really succeeds. It really succeeds. Yeah. That's really where my hang up is. But I think that where that movie is successful, it's really firing on all cylinders. I just think the original Frankenstein is tighter. It's cleaner. I like that movie so much. I mean, my favorite of the monsters is the Invisible Man, but also James Whale. But I think that first Frankenstein is the absolute perfect Universal monster movie.
Much appreciated for your thoughts, gentlemen. Again, I got plenty of notes and plenty of questions to save for another time here. And again, I mean, just this is, I say in my channel description, I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I see, oh, hey, do you want to come on and talk monsters? Or hey, do you want to come on and talk about the 3D printer or the crafting? I guess since Casual Crafter was at least jumping in earlier, let me come to his custom painting of the art.
Whoa!
Let me take you guys out of the case for a little.
Oh, last time I mentioned I couldn't find him, but I found my Frankenstein NECA that my ex gave me. But we're still good friends, and I keep him around. So I wanted to say hi. So
NECA is that is such a top line thing. And see, then okay, thanks for showing that. That's a great.
Oh, hang on. You guys keep talking. I just remembered I have something I can share. One second.
Oh no! Well, in the meanwhile, here, so these are custom painted by Casual Crafter, and it's a crafter. I like the black and white, but
Cool.
I also how would it be in color? So again, I won't get into the full story, but you check out Casual Crafter's channel.
Very cool.
From when he put these together. But as I was noticing today, it's even like the lighting. I think that's one of the key defining things is I don't know the terms for the lighting, but the light comes from lower, casts upward to generate a specific kind of shadow.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was Crafter's intent as he was painting or not, but he definitely, even without me trying to manipulate the lighting, just landed on that same kind of lighting effect on his paint.
Gorgeous.
Thank you, Crafter. All right, Dan, you popped up to locate something. What do you got?
So I just want to say that those mummy figures, the Ardith Bay figures, are absolutely beautiful. Those are really cool, and I'm very jealous. So okay, so a couple years ago, I remember Walgreens carried this line. I saw them on, I think, Twitter. Somebody, a mutual friend, Dinosaur Dracula on Twitter and Instagram. He, I think, is the one who tipped me off on this. But do you guys remember the Bendham figures, like the rubber figures?
Oh yeah.
So Walgreens carried a line of Universal Studio monsters, Bendhams. They had 4. And I think I found all 4 at one Walgreens, but I did hunt around at multiple stores. I was like, I got to find all of them. And when I did eventually find them, they did have all 4. So I got pretty lucky. But they had a Dracula.
Oh, cool.
They had a Dracula. They had a Frankenstein. Which is super cool.
Is he smiling?
No, he is not smiling.
Okay. It's just a light.
We had a really hulking
Whoa.
Lagoon. He has not skipped chest day. And
He's
then
kind of out of the third creature film where it was more
It's all
puffed up.
all that swimming strokes.
and then the one who really oh man, they did him dirty. But the Wolfman, he just looks so goofy.
He's like, why? He's even his pose. It's like, huh?
So yeah, I've got the whole line of all
Cool.
4 monster Bendhams. So they're not vintage, but I thought it was really cool that they reproduced these in like what the year 2018, the year of our Lord. And if they're gonna create those, I wanted to support them. So that's why I went out and got all 4.
Man, last time, well, I gotta, but that's part of the thing, right? There's so many things out there that are so cool, but then, as you said, for space and scratch, for time and money, for availability, right? But the NECA line has to be one of the top lines. The Jada line was very short-lived, but very comparable to NECA. These Bendhams are definitely a fun iteration way to go.
I can afford 4 Bendhams, like the NECAs are way outside my price range if I wanted to collect them the way I want to collect them. So I just don't even touch them. But 4 Bendhams, yeah.
We're on the same wavelength on the NECA, and absolutely coming up from the Toonie Terrors line within NECA, due out within the next couple of months as a pre-Halloween release. They had the 4, but which 4? Dracula, Wolfman. Oh boy! But I know it definitely wasn't the full line. I think they were going to go 2 waves of Universal anyway. Good stuff. Chai Star, I think you're last man standing, jumping in toward the end here, but we appreciate, hey, we know we're on a different time and a different setup. Chai Star, good to have you around to help close out the show. Chai Star, your typical question is, when is the next live stream? And my standard answer will be, right now, I don't know. But definitely, as we said in the text thread, maybe we need to do some more Godzilla content, because I know Mike's a big Godzilla guy. Dan, I don't know your.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big Godzilla guy. In fact, that's a tattoo my girlfriend and I talk about all the time. So
I'm
maybe I'll
saving the
have
space for one too. I'm saving a
Yeah.
spot.
No, TriStar, don't you apologize for working, pal. You showed up all the same. Again, I
Thank
think
you.
people know, but let's do that standard closeout thing. Mike and Dan, and oh, that's right. I got the share screen ready for this. I meant to go early with it, but let's go share and let me get the Cage Club up here. But while I'm navigating, come on, not the Godzilla Fest. They're right there. Our shows. Here we go. So,
oh yeah,
there we go. Guys, tell. So here let's get right there. The Monsters That Made Us on Cage Club coming out once a month. So a week from tonight, you guys have your new release coming up. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Dracula Untold. Which, if you have Netflix, you can watch it on Netflix and then listen to our show next Friday. But Dan and I had a blast watching that and talking about it. So I think that's going to be a good episode.
That was a good one. Mike and I both really enjoyed Dracula Untold initially, and when we revisit it for the show, it turns out we still really like Dracula Untold. So we won't go into too many details. We want you to listen to the show, but I think that's a definitely an underrated release, and I think more people should give it a second shot. So. But yeah, check it out on Netflix. And our next episode, our Dracula Untold episode, is scheduled to come out next Friday, July 26th. So keep an eye out for that.
All right, Dan and Mike and Dan, excellent to have you on. Don't jump out yet. I'm going to close out the live side of here. Thanks. Am I dead yet? Thanks, Chai Star. Thanks, Michaela. Thanks, Junkyard. And who else did we have? That was Mystery Men and Monsters. Thanks, everybody, for contributing, coming in the comments. Find the monsters on the Cage Club. We'll be doing other dive-ins of Svengoolie and other business with the Flashback Horror Convention just coming up in the very near future. We're closing us out for now. Thanks, everybody, catching us live or catching us on replay. Good times ahead. And